Like many of you watching, I'm interested in the culinary world, and our next guest just happens to be a legend in it. Alice Waters is famous for introducing us to the farm to table movement, which is now a worldwide trend.
Yeah, that's right. She's known as restaurant royalty in California, as the owner of Chez Panisse, one of the finest restaurants in the world. Her success story bounces off the pages of a new book right here. Always Home, written by her daughter, Fanny Singer. It's a story of food, family, and culinary escapism. Alice and Fanny join us now live from Hawaii. Welcome.
Hi.
The bond you both share is at the heart of this book. Fanny, what was it like for you to write this memoir in your 30s?
I have to say, I was approached early on to write a book when I was still in college, and I actually, thankfully, had a sober enough sort of amount of self-knowledge to realize that I was not at all ready to do it then. So in my 30s, especially having lived in England for 11 years, I felt like I had sort of gained enough perspective to reflect on this relationship and in a way sort of digest it to allow me to do things beyond sort of diagnose this relationship and look at it in the way that I did. Because it is this, as we all know from your description of my mom at the intro of this segment, she's a force to reckon with. So in a way, this book was my sort of necessary reckoning as part of my progress through life.
I love that. And Fanny, in the book, you make it clear that being raised by a culinary queen meant that mealtime looked a little different than the average kids, and that included your lunchbox. And I love in your book, you even said, yes, every journalist asked me what was in my lunchbox, but that you also understood why every journalist asked you. So can you just share with us a typical lunchbox feast? What did it look like?
Well, I was nearly 18 and still had a lunchbox. So just to put that I was going to high school every day, like about to go off to college, and I still had this huge sort of insulated, actually one of the most heinous things, but that when my mom would admit into her house, but only because it was large enough and had the insulation and could have ice in it and multiple containers and, a separate one for salad and a separate one for dressing so that you didn't wilt the leaves. And there was always a little, fruit macédoine, which is like a little fruit and orange juice, and silverware, napkins, sometimes even a little, rose or branch of rosemary to scent the lunchbox. So it was a sort of, I describe it, I think it was like a sort of bonkers expression of motherly love, but it was also made me weirdly popular, not ostracized, because the contents were delicious. So I usually sort of had a flock of friends surrounding me trying to get a bite of something that was in there.
Hey, I respect a lunchbox that comes with garnishing. I feel like that is next level. Alice, you're known for introducing the world to farm to table, that entire movement decades ago. Now the words local and organic have become quite trendy. These buzzwords can be found in menus and grocery store aisles. Can you talk to us about how you feel about where this movement is at today? Is the gentrification of the movement and how expensive it is something that you predicted?
Well, I think it's more important right now than it's ever been. And unfortunately, the sort of fast food culture has taken a hold of the idea and have absolutely run with it. So they are telling us that it's too expensive, that you don't need to be part of that elitist experience, when I think it's fundamentally about addressing climate and nutrition. And our future really is about that, eating locally, not bringing food from all around the world. We've learned from the exposure of the industrial food system over the pandemic that it's failing, and it's practicing an immoral way of treating food. So I think we have a huge opportunity. And of course, I'd like to see it change school lunch. I don't want it to be, you know, farm to restaurant. I want it to be school to farm.
And farm to school.
Not farm to school, because I want it to be like school supported agriculture, where the schools become dependent on their group of producers, and they take care of them and they buy directly. And that's what we've been doing at Chez Panisse pretty much since the beginning. And the farmers and ranchers, they know that we are a predictable buyer. We'll buy everything that they have. And when their season is over, it's over, because everything that we serve at Chez Panisse is seasonally available. And I know what people are going to say. You live in California. But I don't know, because I grew up in New Jersey. And it's recently, 60, 70 years ago, we always ate seasonally. Everybody in this world, maybe we had some tea or coffee imported. Maybe I'd have an orange at Christmas in New Jersey, but, you know, we ate that way because that's the way to have ripe, tasty food.
Oh, Alice,
Well
I
said.
love that a great deal. Fanny, in the book, you talk about what a beautiful home your mom has made, and you describe in detail her attention to space and this need to curate decor, even if you're staying at a rental. And I have been known to do this too, but I actually feel, sometimes I feel a little foolish when I do it, like I shouldn't care that much about it, even though it brings such joy to everyone. Did you always embrace your mom's habit of doing this, and do you get it now that you're older?
I mean, you know, my mom, if I leave my like puffy red jacket downstairs, it will have been squirreled behind a door before I can even pick it up. And so there is a certain kind of, I would say, rigor that I've always struggled with. But at the same time, I have inherited her appreciation for beauty in the truest sense, not just in this sort of superficial sense, but how we make our spaces and how we organize the space around us and the atmosphere of a place really matters really intensely, I think, on a spiritual level. And I think we really began to understand that during the pandemic. I mean, I named my book Always Home, and right at a moment when we were about to be always home. You know, the book came out and then the pandemic began. And it was a sobering, I think, experience for a lot of people, kind of being stuck at home and realizing they hadn't necessarily organized their space or invested care in their surroundings. And it's not so much about money or spending money on design objects or furniture or anything. It can be very simple things, like I talk about how my mom would burn a branch of dried rosemary in the kitchen when we would come home after a long time away, just to animate the space and bring life back into our surroundings. And it has to do with sometimes the wattage of light, or grabbing a few flowers outside when you're walking on the street and putting them in a little vase on the ledge above your sink or in front of your desk. And those little things, I think, I mean, people wrote to me a lot during the pandemic and actually said those things really mattered and made a difference in my experience of my place, and really did actually help. And that also comes through cooking. You know, cooking is part of how we inhabit our homes and communicate to each other and communicate how we feel about one another. And so I don't think of any of those things as superficial or as work or drudgery. These are things that really are the very substance of our lives, you know, and
Fanny,
really.
let me jump in about the substance of your life and relationships, because I want to talk about dating Alice Waters' daughter. When a guy asks you out for dinner, what does that look like? Because I imagine you probably know more about food and wine than anyone else. So who's ordering the meals? Who's picking the wine? What's it like dating you?
Only very brave souls. Fortunately, my partner now is a great lover of food and of wine, and was ready to just jump into the sort of hedonistic household that we have created. And we cook a lot together, and he loves being with both of my parents. My dad's a winemaker. My mom, of course, loves to cook. So we're there was very little. He was not intimidated, I actually have to say. But it would be daunting, I suppose, for a greener soul.
Yeah, I would definitely be way too nervous to be the one choosing wine at any of your dinners. But thank you guys so much for being with us today, Alice and Fanny. The book is called Always Home, and it's available right now.